garden. Well, we're on our way to our next destination. We've already seen Yosemite National Park, the Grand Canyon, and now we're headed to the very first national park, Yellowstone. So buckle up, we're in for a long ride.
West Coast kid, holiday road, holiday road, holiday road, holiday road.
We finally made it to Yellowstone. We traveled from Arizona all the way up to Wyoming, and it was quite a long journey. Well, here we are at the Visitor Center at Yellowstone National Park. Remember, whenever you're visiting a national park, it's usually best to start at the Visitor Center so that you can learn a bit about the area you're exploring. So let's learn a little bit about Yellowstone. In 1872, Yellowstone became a national park. Explorers and artists who shared the beauty of Yellowstone through photography and paintings helped save the park from being developed. Yellowstone is considered the first national park in the United States. Now, if it wasn't for artists painting beautiful scenery, beautiful scenic pictures of Yellowstone and sharing it with other people, we probably wouldn't have known the value in keeping such a beautiful place. Old Faithful. People come from all over the world to see this iconic geyser. A geyser is a vent in the Earth's surface that will eject hot water and steam. What that means is that it spits out hot water and steam into the air. Old Faithful is one of 500 geysers in Yellowstone. It's also a geyser that has a predictable eruption time. Old Faithful erupts about every 30 minutes and has for the past 30 years. Old Faithful is so unique that it is what helped Yellowstone become a national park. So a lot of people who travel to Yellowstone come because they want to see this geyser. It's one of a kind and they want to see it. Every 30 minutes, Old Faithful ejects boiling hot water and steam up from a vent in the earth. The extremely hot water blasts into the air and can trickle back down, which is why people can only watch Old Faithful from a safe distance. A geyser is proof of ongoing volcanic activity beneath the surface. One day, Old Faithful may stop erupting. So since we don't know how long Old Faithful will keep erupting like it does, you might want to visit sooner rather than later. The Grand Prismatic Hot Spring is the third largest spring in the world. It is bigger than a football field and is very colorful. The different layers of colors are caused by living bacteria. The Grand Prismatic is deeper than a 10-story building. Extremely hot water travels up from a crack in the earth until it reaches the surface of the spring. Notice the steam rising from the surface? Now you're going to see a lot of hot springs or mud pots or geysers throughout the park, and around them you will see steam rising up. And when we see steam, what does that mean? It's hot. Just like in Yosemite National Park, you have to be a careful and cautious driver. You never know when local wildlife might be crossing the road. So remember, drive carefully and slowly. Now this is a picture of my actual experience from 2016, my first trip ever to Yellowstone. When we were driving through the fog on an early morning, we saw a herd of bison walking on the road. Now, if we had been driving too fast, we could have crashed into one and really hurt it. So that's why you want to drive very carefully. You never know when the wildlife might be on the road. Remember, we're visiting their home, their habitat. Here's our family campground in Yellowstone National Park when we visited for the first time in 2016. Yellowstone's weather can be unpredictable, so you have to plan for sun, rain, and even snow, all in the same trip. So you can see our fire pit, and we have a picnic table and some firewood safely away from the fire pit. Our tent is over here. That's our campground. Throughout Yellowstone, you will see hot springs, geysers, and mud pots. Yellowstone is an active volcano, and hot magma is close to the surface. This hot magma has resulted in the creation of hot springs, geysers, and mud pots. The ground surrounding these areas sometimes resembles cracking white rock, but don't be fooled. This ground is not always solid, and underneath might be boiling hot liquids that can cause very serious injuries or burns. Remember, stay on the platforms. Okay, so don't be fooled. This might look like a little pond to you, and this might almost look like a sandy beach, but this area is very fragile. And if you were to step on it, you might go straight through to a hot boiling liquid. That's why you should never step off the platform in Yellowstone. Stay in the designated areas for walking around. This is the turquoise pool, and it's one of many beautiful hot springs to visit here in Yellowstone. It was named for its milky white bottom and blue, gem-like colored water. Isn't it beautiful? Look at this platform. It is so important to stay on the trails and platforms while visiting Yellowstone. Throughout the park, you will see steam rising around you. The ground can be hot and the surface thin. Underneath may be bubbling hot mud. So be careful. Remember, we just talked about it over here with this picture. You never know how hot the ground could be underneath. So stay on the platforms, which is like a trail. Look at these two young guys. Here are two adorable boys following park rules. They are staying on the platform, away from the edge, and not touching any of the hot springs or mud pots. They remember that touching could result in a serious injury and also disturbs the tiny organisms hard at work. Lots of big words in there. So they don't want to touch it or get too close because they don't want to get hurt. But also, there are living bacteria and tiny organisms hard at work on the mud pots, the geysers, and the hot springs. Hot springs can be found throughout Yellowstone. The colors of these springs can be magnificent, but don't try to touch the colorful liquid. The liquid you see is superheated and boiling hot. The water or liquid you see once started as rainwater. The water seeps into the ground, becomes heated by magma, and rises back to the surface. So remember, if you ever see pictures of a volcano and that orange sort of gel-like flowing liquid, that's what we're talking about when we talk about magma. It gets so hot. Remember, when going on hikes, always bring plenty of water. And if at your campground, make sure to drink lots of water to stay hydrated. Look at Mr. Phillips and the kids drinking some water that they're pumping, making sure to stay hydrated because we did so much physical activity and so much walking around. They didn't want to go without water. They would feel pretty bad if they did. The beautiful colors found in the hot springs at Yellowstone can be mesmerizing. The reason for these colors are groups of living organisms that are grouped together. These teeny tiny organisms need the unique environment in the hot springs to survive. So the organisms coming together and clustering up is what helps give that color, or the blue color, to the hot springs. It's another reason why we say don't disturb what's going on there. Don't throw sticks in, don't try to touch it. Because not only would you get hurt, but also you're going to disrupt all the magic that's happening there. Yellowstone has so many beautiful sights that you almost don't notice the strong and stinky odors coming from the different mud pots around the park. The gas coming off of the mud pots that makes them smell like rotten eggs is called hydrogen sulfide. Everything is so neat, but can also be so stinky. Lots of interesting smells at Yellowstone. And you know that we live next to some marshland and some different salty areas in the Bay Area. And sometimes when you drive near those places, you get that same kind of smell. It's that rotten egg smell. Mammoth Hot Springs is a sight to see, resembling what looks like a frozen waterfall. This hot spring is just the opposite. Water trickles over the edges of large terraces. In the early years of its discovery, people would venture to this hot spring to seek relief for ailments in the mineral water. Today, soaking is not allowed. So a long time ago, people would travel from all over the place to get inside and soak in the mineral water that's found here at Mammoth Hot Springs. But now it's such a delicate system, people are not allowed to do it anymore. The Yellowstone River flows through the park. The flowing of the river has carved into the rocks to form a canyon. This canyon is called the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. Rocks in this canyon were soft and weak, making it easier for the river to carve a deep canyon. So remember, we learned about the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River flowing through there, helping dig deeper that canyon. Well, the same thing is happening here, except it's in Yellowstone that this canyon is being created. And it's the Yellowstone River that's creating it. Pretty amazing. One more picture. Just wanted to show you a nice, beautiful picture of these two cute boys exploring parts of Yellowstone National Park. There are so many amazing things to see here at Yellowstone, and it's such a big park. So now we're going to go on a hike around Yellowstone to see the wildlife that lives here. All right, what might I find in the vast wilderness of Yellowstone National Park? Coyotes. Coyotes. Coyotes are a common animal to see, not only in Yellowstone, but in other parts of the United States. They have adapted so well that they can even survive around cities. A coyote sometimes gets mistaken for a wolf, but it's much smaller. It's only about a third of the size of a wolf. Coyotes are gray or tan, and they usually have a little bit of orange on their ears and on their tails. They are carnivores and they do have sharp teeth, so you don't want to get too close. They also have a very distinct howl. Sometimes they make it in the early morning or in the evening time. And they also like to travel in packs. Such amazing animals. I wonder what I'm going to find next. Wow, a bison. Here's a bison standing on the side of the road. Remember, these animals are free to roam throughout Yellowstone, so it's not unusual to see them near the road or even on it. Bison are extremely large animals and very strong. They're also good swimmers. You want to keep your distance from a bison though, and don't try to pet it. They eat plants. They are herbivores, and they are very important animals to Yellowstone National Park. What amazing creatures. Wow, gray wolves. Let's go. What an amazing sight. Gray wolves. Gray wolves are very smart animals, and they usually travel in packs, usually with about 10 members. Every member of the pack has a special job to do. These animals are carnivores, and they hunt big animals and small. In Yellowstone National Park, they are protected, which means they cannot be hunted, but the wolves that leave the park can be hunted in nearby states. These are very special animals, but keep your distance. River otters. A river otter. These weasels are usually found near water. It's a weasel, but it's an aquatic weasel, which means it likes to swim in the water. These guys are kind of slow on land and not very agile, but in the water, they're great swimmers. They can hold their breath for 2 to 3 minutes at a time. Then they need to come up for air. They hunt frogs and fish and even turtles. Aren't they cute? What else am I going to see in this amazing national park? A grizzly bear. A grizzly bear. Now this is the bear that appears on our California state flag. We learned about symbolism last week, and every state has its own flag with an animal on it or some sort of symbol. Well, the grizzly bear is on our California state flag. Grizzly bears no longer exist in California. They were hunted into extinction. So now one of the only places to see living grizzly bears is by visiting a place like Yellowstone National Park. So when you see one, it's a rare and very special sight. These guys have adapted to live in meadows and to live in forests. They're great climbers and hunters, and they are meat eaters. If you ever come across one, make sure you stay far away. I have had so much fun exploring Yellowstone National Park with you today. It's starting to get a little bit chilly out, so I'm gonna head back to camp and start getting ready for a campfire. Bye.